Gordon, I'd like to start by saying thank you very much for allowing us to come along today to Central Foods and talking to you about the forecasting module. So to begin with, Central Foods Limited is a really successful business, well regarded. Tell us a bit about the business and about your role in it, customers that you serve and so on.
Well, the business started in '96, so this is our 27th year. We're a frozen food consolidator, servicing caterers across the UK. Some big brands in there, Whitbread, Green King, wholesalers like Break Brothers, Bidfood. And we basically bring together frozen food products for caterers. Approximately 290 to 300 products from 49 suppliers spread around the UK, delivered into one point and then shipped out to these caterers to enable them to serve food to the public in various outlets, whether they're restaurants, schools, universities, prisons. Yeah, and it's all frozen. And it's, we've had good success. 27 years established. We employ around 20 people based in Northampton. And I would say we're leaders in the field now. It's been a very good success story.
And tell us about your role in the business.
I'm managing director, 50% owner with my wife Alison. Prior to this, I was purchasing director at Bidfood. Really got fed up with corporate life, wanted to do something on my own. And this was always something that intrigued me and felt that we could add value. So, I'm covering finance, my wife does marketing, operations falls under myself, and then I've got a commercial manager who looks after the sales these days. So it's really about, for me, it's more about stock, finance, and technical in terms of specifications, etc.
So unbelievably, when I checked my diary this morning, it's been 10 years that you've been using our Octolus BI product for your reporting and odd little bits of functionality. But until we set about developing this new forecasting module, you relied on a whole spreadsheet system to manage that in the past. Tell us a little bit about how that process used to work.
The old system was laborious. We had to extract data from SQL, dump it into Excel, and then create pivot tables for everybody to use, whether it was the sales team, whether it was myself for stock management. And as you can imagine, with nearly 300 SKUs and 200 plus customers, the number of transactions that we had, it was very, very cumbersome. And we actually got to the point where Excel didn't have enough rows and columns to actually work with the data, which I think is a common problem for a lot of companies as they grow. They just outgrow Excel. So we did desperately need a solution, and especially for the forecasting, because that forecasting module is the key part of our business now. We'd looked for a data cube to analyze our data for a long, long time. And we stumbled across Octolus from Illuminins, and it was a breath of fresh air because it's such an easy piece of software to work with. But there were other aspects of our business, specifically stock management, that wasn't within its remit. So we needed some help in identifying a solution that could make my life easier on stock forecasting. And a brief conversation with yourselves highlighted that you could come in and basically listen to what the problems were and then find solutions using the data that we had integrated with our SQL setup and accounts package, and give us a solution to manage that stock in a more efficient way.
So tell me about how the monthly forecasting with the spreadsheets used to work.
So we had to wait until we closed the month end off, take the data into an Excel sheet. The Excel sheet had to be updated each month manually. We were running something like 39 forecasts. So on average, it would take probably around about 3 days a month to update that data with the sales information, check the stock against a vision to make sure any adjustments had been catered for. And then it was down to manual calculations based around the various variables that we have, from how many cases is on a pallet, what type of pallet is used, how many pallets fit on a vehicle, what the lead time is, trying to work around holidays, and this was all done manually. There was nothing written. It was just me looking at the data and manipulating it. So when I wasn't around, it didn't get done. So it was obviously a vulnerability for the business. Should anything ever happen to me, or if the business needed some intervention, nobody else could do it.
So using spreadsheets to managing that process took up a lot of your management time. Were there any other things you think that were being missed because of the limitations of that system?
Yeah, our service levels historically had been in the low 80s, 80%. And that was just because we weren't carrying the right level of stock, because all these manual manipulations, as you can imagine, ended up missing. There was always something missed. You misinterpreted the data, or the phone rang and you got distracted, and then the calculation wasn't as accurate as it could be. I used to say it's time for a coffee in a dark room, because I couldn't afford to have any interruptions. It just had to be really, really focused on and focused around that service level. And now our service levels are running in the high 90s, 99.2, I think we've now been able to achieve. So it's phenomenal. It literally has transformed the business since we've done it. Our growth is phenomenal. The customer reaction is really, really positive, and it's sales are through the roof.
So, I mean, overall, how would you describe the importance of that forecasting process within Central Foods?
I would say now it's probably our number one piece of software, without a doubt, or tool that we use. And it doesn't just rely on me. There's other operators now in the business that can access it on a daily basis. It's got a lot of self-reporting that runs overnight. So when we come in and log in a morning, the reports are there telling us queries that we need to investigate and look at in case we're going to run out of stock and we need to adjust it manually. But yeah, I can literally take more time away from the business knowing that somebody else can look at it and use what's been created. And it's a 12-month rolling as well, so it's just continuously updated, which again was just something that we didn't have before. It was always the best intention to say, right, I'll do the forecast for a rolling 12 months, build it into the contract, and then find a supplier would ring us and say, well, we haven't had our forecast, and it's in the contract. And it was just because it was so laborious to add those extra months on to keep that 12-month going, it just became a low priority. And then every January you have to start again with a new set of data for the full month, whereas now we've got 12-month rolling. It's great.
So can you say a few words about your experience of working with us on this project? Particularly, how easy was it to communicate what you were looking for? You know, how well does the new module match up with your needs and expectations?
I think it was relatively straightforward. One thing I learned was I originally set this project up for somebody else to work on, and because that person hadn't been involved in the forecasting as such, it was very apparent that I had to take it back and work with yourselves direct, because they just didn't understand what I was trying to achieve and the pitfalls that I'd encountered and the tweaks that we needed to make. But it's been seamless. The communication is spot on. We've done most of it over Teams and demonstrations of how the data. I think you now know probably as much about our business as some of our staff, which is not a bad thing.
I think I probably do.
But it just helps, and you're finding little traits or little discrepancies that we'd never thought about and said, well, have you thought about this, and what about this? And we're probably 75% there, but there's still more work to do, and it's around the complex areas now. It's around taking the volume and filling those vehicles. How do you make the most use of a vehicle on the road from an environmental issue, not alone just a cost? But it's worked, and it's worked extremely well.
So when we work on these kind of customized modules, a bite-sized iterative approach really works well for us. In your opinion, did that work for you, and were you able to easily get what you wanted?
Yeah, I think the approach worked for a business our size, because we had other pressures that were on myself personally, but also the business. So to be able to structure it in a way that we started off with, let's say, one part of the module, and get that right before we moved on to the next one, worked extremely well. We've probably been on the project now for 6 or 7 months, And we've probably got another 6 months left in terms of the last 25%, because I think that's the hardest part. But yeah, definitely that approach works. I couldn't have given it the time. If you said to me, look, we want to do this and we want to get it hit over a 2 to 3 week period, it wouldn't have worked for us at all.
And I think there's also an element of it's only after you see what can happen with the early bits that makes the later bits becomes more obvious what needs to be done.
Yes, it's almost self-learning, because as you do something, you see another benefit of it that you think, well, what about doing this? And then the tweaks make the project longer and longer and longer, which is, I suppose, great from your point of view as a consultant. But thankfully, we've got the access to Octolus to be able to do that and work through over a wide time frame. And you can accommodate us. But yeah, we learn as we go on. It's an evolution. It's just continuously growing, and enhancement, tweaks, whatever you want to call it, different additions to that. And it's, I suppose, rather than being very prescriptive, this is just flexible. And the approach that you gave us, Octolus gave us, is very flexible.
So now the module's installed and running properly, what are the real benefits that you've seen to the business that you didn't expect to see?
I think Illuminus have given us a return on investment that I never envisaged from the start. It's paid itself numerous times, multiple times, and I recommend Illuminus whenever I can. And this next step is the challenge. I think it's manipulating that data yet again to say, okay, if you want 18 containers a month, how do you split the 18 containers to make sure that they're coming in the right order at the right time of the month? But it's yeah, I've confidence that you'll do it, Paul, and or Illuminus will deliver it, should I say?
From my personal point of view, it's one of the real joys of this work with you, Gordon. As you say, I probably understand an awful lot around the business now, and particularly the way this whole forecasting thing needs to work and has to work. It's useful for me to be able to bring experience from other businesses too, people I've worked with, and other bits of functionality that I think, oh, that's something I've worked with somewhere else would feed into what we were doing.
Yeah, and I think everybody at Illuminus always comes across with an element of confidentiality. There's never anything disclosed, but there's a lot of best practice that comes into play. And I think that's really good for us, because we can use some of the elements you've already done with other clients. But as I say, there's never anything confidentially given away. And yeah, it's a great partnership. And love's too strong a word, but we love this. It's just done so much for the business.
And finally, how would you summarize your partnership with the Illuminus team?
Central Foods' partnership with the Illuminus team is very open, honest, professional, courteous, a little bit of fun, which is not a bad thing. Yeah, I think it's going to be there for a long time. Definitely as long as I'm in the business anyway, or own the business.
Gordon, thank you very much for your time.
No, thanks, Paul, for improving our business. Thank you very much.